It was a night at the Laugh Factory. Everything went great, had a great set, was having fun with other comics. And when just a night that everything goes right.
Mhm.
And I got to my car and I was so fucking sad. I mean, I felt so empty. I mean, being able to do stand up and it's like having a superpower. It feels cool to be able to do that. I don't want to be in hotel rooms by myself all the time. Like I like being home with my friends and family. I like coming home to the same place every night. How do I integrate these worlds? How do I bring comedy with me and plug it into a lifestyle?
How do you go from that point where you're in your car to say, what else is in between that and doing a podcast about, personal development and self-help?
So from there, it was kind of like I had to ease out of it while I ramped something else up. It wasn't like overnight I was gone. I was like, okay, I'm going to just start taking shows that are like within an hour of my place, or then it was like 30 minutes, and then it was like very like, okay, I have to get being paid this much and within 30-minute drive of me. So I started just kind of cutting down that way. Mm-hmm. And I had started the Self Helpless podcast, and that was feeling really fun. Like, okay, this is like a cool way to kind of be in the comedy world, but not have to be a performer.
Talking to Delanie Fischer, and we're talking in the pregame, and she said, I'm originally from Encino. She goes, wait, I'm from Encino. I live in Encino. Where in Encino do you live? No,
I mean,
the address, because I don't want people to stop.
Yeah, totally. I grew up, I don't know if the Trader Joe's was there, but it's like right around the corner from that Trader Joe's on like White Oak and.
Oh, that's the old Trader Joe's. Yeah. So you're like, so you're north of Boulevard or south Boulevard?
Oh gosh. I'm not good with maps, Michael.
Yeah, so you're not like, a snobby valley because you're a snob. You just say, I'm Boulevard. So,
where Oxnard Boulevard and yeah. But like in that area, I went to Bethel Lutheran Elementary School. I don't know if you remember that, but that's where I went as a kid.
No, I don't remember that, but I'm a Jewish kid from the valley. So I went to Lamar Road School, and then afterwards you go to Hebrew school after that at Stephen S. Wise, which is more like a country club. Remember Stephen S. Wise? You know that place?
No.
Stephen S. Wise Temple over on 405 on Mulholland.
Does not ring a bell.
Yeah, it's huge.
But I'm sure I saw it a million times. But that's so funny.
So that's wild. That Trader Joe's is still there, by the way.
It's still kicking, baby. I mean, the parking lot is still as small as ever. Line around the corner. I mean, as Trader Joe's are.
So this is interesting. So now, the first place I did stand, you'll chuckle at this. First place I did stand up was 1986 at LA Cabaret. You know where that is?
That sounds familiar. Yeah,
Encino on Ventura Boulevard in Louise.
Okay, I'm sure I've done shows there. I'm sure.
Okay, no,
if it's still there, I don't know.
No, it's not.
It's not. Okay, then no.
Yeah.
But is it like a little hole in the wall type place, or was it like a big club?
Well, it was tucked away in the back of that little shopping center. There used to be a Nathan's Hot Dogs there, and it's your dad. We were talking about your dad. Your dad went to Birmingham High School, same high school I went to.
Yes, that is so funny. Could you imagine if you guys were besties? I don't think so. There's a big enough gap that it's not.
But my brothers are older, so there's a gap there. But I digress. It's about you right now. Where was the first place you did stand up? Was it in the Valley? Tell us a little about yourself.
My first place I ever did stand up was I went to UC Santa Barbara, and they had a student run comedy show called Laughology. I don't know if you've heard of it or done it. Great production. They would bring up comedians from LA and stuff like that to headline, and then the students would all open for them. And that was my first time doing stand up. 5 minutes, absolutely terrified, and in front of like 200 of my peers. But the reason I got into it, I never wanted to get into stand up. That was not on my radar. But one of my friends in college kind of tricked me into taking this theater class with her for fun. Mm-hmm. And halfway through the class, the teacher starts talking about how the final is performing an original monologue in front of a live audience. And I was like, what the fuck? Why did you not tell me this? I would have never taken this class. I have terrible stage fright. And so I performed this monologue, and it was just like this, kind of funny thing about how my parents were polar opposite people, and what does that make me, kind of a thing. And it got a lot of laughs. And so I was kind of doing something stand-up adjacent without really realizing it or thinking about it. And then somebody from that crowd told me that I should come and audition for the student comedy show. And I was like, I know what that is. I attend every Saturday as a fan, but there's no way I'm getting on that stage. And so my friend was like, we'll be there. We'll be at the audition. So I had a very encouraging friend kind of see something in me that I was never going to, come to the realization of. And so that's how I started in school.
And then that was like your place to go to do stand-up for a while. And then where did your journey take you after that?
Yes. So my very first club that I performed at was the Ventura Harbor Comedy Club. I'm assuming it's still there.
I just talked to somebody who was talking about that.
Oh, great. Okay, awesome.
They're just now closing. Somebody just said something about this. A comedian, they're just now closing because they're the rent or something like that.
Oh, wow. Okay. So that was the first club that I performed at. And so once I graduated from Santa Barbara, I moved back to LA, where I was from, and I just immersed myself in the LA comedy scene. And of course, you hear all those messages as a new comic in LA, like, oh, you're going to want to go somewhere else and get decent at it before you show yourself in LA. And I'm like, well, I'm from here. There's really no, my family's here. I've grown up here. I'm just going to have to be shitty in front of people right away. I mean, that's I'm not going to live in New York just because you told me to, right? Or wherever. It was a lot of performing all over the place, producing shows, just getting my hands on anything that I could. But a handful of years into it, I realized the lifestyle is just not for me. It was making me so depressed. I love the craft of stand-up. I love the writing. I love that getting on stage. I mean, even though I have terrible stage fright, there is no greater feeling and greater high than getting laughter from something that you wrote. I mean, it's just the weirdest experience, and I feel like nothing touches that experience. And so there was so much I liked about it, but the day-to-day and what it was going to require of me to do it more full-time. I was like a part-time comic, I was getting paid to do it, but I was not fully in, and I didn't really want to be. And so I was like, I got to figure something out here. How do I get out of this? I'm now kind of reliant on it for income. It's leading to other opportunities that I like better, or may like better, right? So I ended up writing, a Lifetime movie because somebody saw me perform on stage and then signed me. I was getting random acting gigs. I was getting a lot of fun stuff out of it. So I was scared to take it away because I'm like, well, how am I going to get opportunities that might lead to something that I like better? And so it was just, it was a really hard decision to leave.
So what was the impasse? What was that moment where you said, you know what? Because I get that, because there's a point where in stand-up where, it's like, look, I'm getting really good at this, and this is going to take me a certain place. But in order for me to go that route, it's 7 nights a week, 7 days a week writing. It's traveling, it's hotel rooms, it's flying, it's there, it's going there, and it's that whole journey, and everything else takes a back seat other than that. And some people are like, that's the dream, man. I'm like, I get that. But then you're at that impasse and you said, no, I want to take this way. What was that point? Where were you at that time? And what was going on in your head about that?
I remember the exact moment. And there are a couple of things that led up to it. I kind of got the feeling I got to figure something out. And, one big thing was I went to a comedy festival, and a lot of people go there to obviously network and get in front of the bookers and all that kind of stuff. And somebody reached out to me from the club and was like, hey, we're waiting on your stuff. We'd love to book you for a weekend. And it hit me I don't want that. So what am I doing here? Right. So I was like, wait, this is the end goal. So, okay. So that was kind of an inkling of okay, I gotta figure something out. And then the moment I knew I was done, it was a night at the Laugh Factory. Everything went great, had a great set, was having fun with other comics. And, when just a night that everything goes right, the set goes great. People want to take a photo with you or get your autograph. You have people that you respect saying, hey, great set. Mm-hmm. And I got to my car and I was so fucking sad. I mean, I felt so empty, and it kind of hit me if this is how I feel on a good night and the nights are just going to be like this at a different scale, I got to do something. I have to get out of this. There's nothing externally that I can point to that says this is going wrong or I should feel bad about it. But internally I was like, I got to do something different. And that is a really weird contrast when everybody's saying like, hey, great job. And like, and giving you opportunities or whatever. And you're like feeling like you shouldn't be here. You don't want to be here. You feel guilty that you're getting up the opportunities because there's other people who would love to have them and want to do it. And so, yeah, that's when I knew. I was like, shit. By the way, can you cuss on here? I feel like I've said a
You ever? I used to be addicted to backgammon, played online when like the internet first started, and I was like, yeah, I'm winning. I can't stop now. Or when you lose, like I got to win one game and then I'll go to sleep. You get so good. It's stand up to me. It was like habitual, like backgammon. I was like, I'm winning. I can't stop. And then you have a shitty routine, and you're like, why the fuck am I doing this? And that was easier. But that's really hard to walk away. That's like a little pile of money on the Vegas on blackjack table. Like,
right.
Keep the money.
Right. And there's, it's like, I mean, being able to do stand up and like, it's like having a superpower. It feels cool to be able to do that. Right. And so there's this whole identity crisis of like, if I leave, there's nothing special about me anymore. Like there's nothing, and then I'm cutting off all of these other opportunities, these writing opportunities or acting opportunities or whatever might come of it. All of that goes away. And so, but the uncomfortability that I was feeling and I was just kind of looking ahead. I'm like, I don't want to travel that much. I don't want to be in hotel rooms by myself all the time. Like I like being home with my friends and family. I like coming home to the same place every night. How do I integrate these worlds? How do I bring comedy with me and plug it into a lifestyle that I really love?
Well, on that note, we'll get into like self-help and personal development. And I have a parallel with that. Speaking of parallels, is that Maverick?
Oh my gosh, that's Goose, and Maverick is in my chair.
I have a dog. Not only do we have a parallel between stand-up comedy and personal development, but I also have a dog named Maverick.
Oh my gosh, that is so funny.
He's a little bigger. He's 194 pounds. But
oh my gosh, Maverick is 18 pounds, and then Goose is 9 pounds over here.
So let's segue. Let's make lemonade. Let's segue from that to going into how do you go from that point where you're in your car to say, I mean, what else is in between that and doing a podcast about, personal development and self-help?
Yeah. So from there, it was kind of like I had to ease out of it while I ramped something else up. It wasn't like overnight I was gone. I was like, okay, I'm going to just start taking shows that are like within an hour of my place. Or then it was like 30 minutes, and then it was like very like, okay, I have to get being paid this much and within 30-minute drive of me. So I started just kind of cutting down that way. Mm-hmm. And I had started the Self Helpless podcast with two of my best friends, Taylor Tomlinson and Kelsey Cook. We started the podcast together, and that was feeling really fun. Like, okay, this is like a cool way to kind of be in the comedy world, but not have to be a performer. Mm-hmm. And so that was feeling good. And I had this really weird hobby that I did as a joke called Dicks by Delanie, where I would paint on coffee mugs. I would dickify my friends and family. I would basically make penis caricatures. Yeah. Anyway, so I had this weird hobby. It started at a Christmas party, actually, with a bunch of comedians. It was like one of those like white elephant gift exchanges. They're like, just bring something that you can either make that you made or like something cheap. Yeah. And I just painted a bunch of colorful penises on this coffee mug. Anyway, that kind of took off. People started wanting orders of this like dick mug thing from me. I'm like, okay, I was not expecting this, but I guess I'll do it. And so, yeah, so weird. And so I actually launched, I turned that into a real business called Dicks by Delanie, where people could submit photos of themselves or a favorite character or their family member and turn them into penis art. And so I launched the business and that really took off. And so I was able to leave stand up. And then I kind of basically told everybody on the podcast, like, hey, I am trying to become a stay-at-home comedian where I am going to paint penises and then you can buy them. And that is what I did. So I at first started with like hand painting stuff. And then I ended up bringing on a couple cartoonists into the business, and we went digital with everything. So then it was like a digital image people were getting, and it was much better art because they were professionals. And people would put their images on like tote bags or birthday cakes or, t-shirts or pillows or whatever. And it was pretty fun.
In the novelty business, That's the
I got into, yes, the novelty like gift business.
Yeah.
And so I was doing that business. Yeah, exactly. I called myself an entrepreneur at the time.
Nice.
And so, yeah, I was doing the podcast and I was doing Dicks by Delanie. That allowed me to leave a corporate job I had in entertainment. I left stand up. And so I did that full time and I made a decent living doing that. And then from there, people started asking for help with their own businesses. They're like, how are you really making money doing dick stuff? You know, and I'm like, yes.
Right.
So I started helping comedians, artists, entrepreneurs with like branding and, you know, different kind of unconventional marketing and really leveraging podcasts in their, you know, marketing strategies and stuff. And I loved that. So I had a consultancy for, I think 4 or 5 years. And then I was like, I want to start creating stuff again. So now I'm in this weird phase where I still have the podcast, but I'm also doing a lot of comedy writing for a nonprofit. So I'm helping with like their celebrity print and video campaigns and stuff like that. And then I'm writing, do you know what Oracle decks are?
What?
Oracle decks? Ever heard of like Oracle decks? Like gift deck cards with like, if you go to like, you know, an Urban Outfitters or something, you go to the gift section and they have these like little coffee table book / card decks. I have a couple, I have a deal for one of those right now. So my comedy writing and stuff has just taken me to these very strange places. And so that's where I'm at now.
So I would think, you know, I don't know, I don't monetize my podcast, but to me, that I would think the Dicks by Delanie is the most lucrative venture out of all of them.
Well, it's interesting. That was doing great, but we had to sell so many dicks, right, to make a decent amount of money. And I really didn't feel like being this very high volume business. Yeah. I really love the consulting aspect where I could have like a handful of clients and make the same amount or more than pushing product, you know, and pushing these things all the time. And so that was a learning experience too, of like, I like this whole kind of lower volume service-based situation. And that kind of led me into this other direction. Both were great, but like once I kind of hit a wall with something, I know it's time to pivot. And then I organically go to like what's kind of in front of me that I'm enjoying, you know.
And the more successful that gets, though, then you get the time restraint, you know, because you have consulting is
yes,
unless you're going to do the typical, you know, like YouTube, you know, library, you know, kind of membership kind of based type of thing. What does that look like right now?
So the consulting, I'm no longer doing the consulting because now I'm doing all of this stuff full time, but I was doing just a lot of one-to-one, long-term kind of one-to-one clients. Of course, I started off with like one-off sessions here and there. I didn't really know what I was doing and then had more structure along the way. And so, I wasn't I've tried group type stuff and all that, but I'm just a real big fan of like that personalized support. Mm-hmm. And so, I just had a lot of like really amazing people across different industries that wanted my help and guidance and kind of hands-on implementation because a lot of them were podcast fans. So they saw my kind of transitions and what I was doing, and they really trusted me. They saw how I was able to pivot, and that kind of drew a lot of people to me organically, which was great. So like very passionate about the power of podcasting through all of this stuff because
When did you start your podcast?
Podcasts, we started coming up on 8 years ago, I think.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. It's been around a while. And so our listeners heard all these different like versions of me, you know, pivoting from one thing to the next. And so I would announce like, oh, I launched Dicks by Delanie. You can now buy this. And they would show up to support me. And then it was like, hey, I'm offering consulting because honestly, it was their idea for me to offer consulting. Yeah. And so then I did. And then that was booked up. And so now it's like in this new phase of like, hey, I have a publishing deal and I'm gonna have a book coming soon. And so it's been really incredible to have the podcast as the constant while all these other things have been changing throughout the years.
The podcast, that wasn't so easy as it is now. I mean, I've been doing it for about 3 years. And a great time to start 8 years ago because that was like when Instagram first started. It's like follow. but
Yeah.
back then it was hard to do a podcast. What was the methodology of recording back then, and how'd you do it?
Oh my gosh. Our very first episode, we had like two handheld microphones that we were just like, passing back and forth. we were recording in the conference room of my day job at the time on my lunch break or something, and just passing back mics. And we had the little Zoom recorder or something like the handheld Zoom thing. And oh my gosh, I mean, I'm sure the audio is just absolutely what a disaster. But that's how we started, and we had like eventually we added video into it, but we had like a tripod set up with a camera and, these handheld mics, we weren't utilizing Zoom. I don't even know, was Zoom a thing? I don't know. I'm sure Skype was a thing, but there was no the ease of podcasting now with the setup and equipment and stuff is so, so different than what we were doing back then. We were piecemealing a lot of stuff together.
So the podcast has been monetized. And now really, that's probably doing better than all of them.
It's so interesting. Everything fluctuated throughout the years, right? Like some months, like my consulting revenue was the highest. And then other months, the podcast revenue would be the highest. Other months, Dick's by Delanie would be the highest. And so it was always like, but then, it became to where I really had to think about like, I don't want to have three businesses, I want to just be able to simplify. I got to go with like what I'm enjoying the most. And then I hope that like the money will follow that because I'll be pouring my energy into it, and so, I mean, and now it's like you said, getting involved in podcasting 8 years ago was great because there weren't a ton of podcasts. And so we were able to grow pretty quickly. But now 8 years later, there's a bazillion podcasts. It's a lot more competitive to monetize your show. So we've seen fluctuations, in the market and stuff like that. And so, I mean, you really have to love this stuff when your market can be that volatile and it's just changing all the time with technology and how ads are placed and all that. So, it's been a weird ride, but I'm still doing comedy in there. It's woven into what I do, but it's not performing on stage.
Where are you at right now? Complete like what's going on with you today and in your personal life and your business life?
Yeah. So I work from home. So basically my day is kind of structured with, I do a little bit of writing for the publishing deal that I'm working on. I do that. And then I will do some podcast stuff. And then in the afternoons, I will do the work for the nonprofit. So it's like, writing this deck, which is full of like puns and silly jokes and, fun titles and stuff. The podcast stuff is kind of like, I kind of like to blend comedy and activism with the podcast, whether it's, mental health or social justice or whatever we're talking about. And then with the nonprofit, it's a lot of like, punching things up, script writing, taglines, coming up with pitches and ideas for celebrities. And so that's kind of like I do 3 different things in a day. But I don't want to be doing a million different things, but it's just right now I'm in this like I have a writing deadline for this book thing. And so that won't always be there. And so it'll be like, this nonprofit work and the podcast is probably going to be
where did the
focus.
Personal development, self-help stuff come? Were you always into that, or where did that come from?
Yeah. So when I met my friends, Kelsey and Taylor, when we were starting the Self Helpless podcast, we were all doing stand-up at the time, but we're all very like type A, very interested in taking care of ourselves and personal growth and all that stuff. And we were finding it very hard to connect with people because, the road life of a comedian, whatever people are, whatever they're drinking, they're partying, they're maybe not taking great care of themselves, or at least that's who we're kind of surrounded by. And so we really connected on how do you live this really crazy lifestyle, but also prioritize your health and your wellness while doing it because it's so challenging. And that's how Self Helpless was started, was like, how are we going to, how do we blend this like, we're in this weird industry, but we also care about this other stuff. And we all just talked about the first episode was like our first self-help books that we read and how they impacted us. And from there. So we all had like,
let's talk about that.
Yeah. First self-help book I read was actually from Greg Barrett, who's a comedian and wrote, he's just not that into you and all that stuff. He wrote a book with his wife. I think at the time, I'm not sure if they're still together, It's called A Breakup Because It's Broken. That was my first self-help book that I ever read when I was like 19, going through my first breakup, and was very helpful. I mean, all the exercises in there, everything really made me feel a lot better. And it's like, okay, this is kind of a cool thing. And then, years down the road, when I started this podcast with my girlfriends, by then I was like very into minimalism and all these other kind of self-helpy type lifestyle choices. And it was just fun to talk about and get to know each other on this podcast. So it's cool.
I'm an old friend of mine, Greg Dean. He's a comedy writing teacher. We go, I'd go, do his class off and on for years. And big Tony Robbins guy. I've done every seminar that Tony's done. And his background is with Tony. He originally started NLP, neuro linguistic programming. That was the beginning of what Greg Dean's career, personal development and then comedy. I'd go to a seminar for like 5 days, whatever, and I would come back. I would do a writing course, and kind of get ready to do another stint. And he's like, I hate when you come back from these like personal development, because comedy is set with a negative denominator, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And personal development is not all like positive, but it's notice the negative and then try to come up with what's positive and work from there. As to where stand-up is your premises, it's a premise, shattered assumption, and then shattered assumption is a negative denominator. So you're thinking of like, what do I hate about this? What am I about lately?
Yes.
Personal development is, well, this is interesting. What can I learn from this?
Right.
So I would try to like mix some of that. I'm all pumped up, ready to get and I didn't know that, I have like a personal development coach saying, you got to be careful when you say these things that are negative, because the triad of emotions dictates the physiology, the focus,
right?
The words. So that comedians need to be cognitive of that. So then I said, well, I got to come up with a third eye of comedy, which is I have to trigger my mind to say, that is a joke. It's a shattered, I'm just using a connector that's with a negative denominator.
Right.
You find it difficult taking comedy, which is the opposite of personal development, with that modality, and have that conflict sometimes.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. You nailed it. It's so interesting because, in the world of stand-up and, what audiences tend to like a lot as well is like, it's very much celebrated if you're self-deprecating, if you're kind of an asshole, if you're really sarcastic, if you're kind of, poking fun at somebody, whatever. And those are things that you are saying over and over and over again every night on stage. It's like your brain is picking up on something, or, if you're being self-deprecating, and maybe it's not even true anymore, but you keep saying because it gets a laugh. And so then you're like in this weird place of like, well, I keep saying that I'm like sad and broke on stage, but I'm actually really happy and I'm doing pretty well financially, right? It's like this weird dichotomy of like authenticity.
And you're like,
right. And so it's like, I've always been so much more impressed when people can make something positive, funny, and also when people can make something that is educational funny. Like everybody's got jokes about, I don't know, weddings or this or that or whatever. But it's like, if you can make something funny and it makes me think differently, that's the shit I love. I think that is very challenging to do, especially if it's something that is an unpopular opinion. The people that can make unpopular opinions funny and then change your mind at the end is, to me, beautiful, right? Like, I mean, and so I think there's just different ways to do comedy too. And it's like, what do you value when you're watching a set, but yeah, I totally agree. It's such a weird experience for sure.
that is my sweet spot too. There's the comedian that can take that. And then also comedians like Bill Burr that can navigate. They like to force themselves to navigate in dangerous waters and see if they can get out. Which is like, he's so bored. He's been doing it for so long. They'll try to they'll force him. Those are the two types of things that are really a great comedian, really has that ability. But when you're doing your podcast, because you're a comedian, you have other comedians on there, you guys are talking about self-help. It's like, you know, you're always trying to figure it out. And I gravitate towards being serious. You know, I
Yeah.
don't know why. Anything with the podcast, maybe because that's
Yeah.
realistically that's who I really am. But
Right. Interesting. Yeah.
when I'm free flowing with, you know, in my normal state, I'm a weird, funny, that heightened version of me. But I
Right.
think that when it was something about podcasting, when I'm talking to comedians, I have, whether it's Bullet Tour podcast or the Long Shot Leaders, which is inherently, you know, drama. But no matter what, I'm always analytical, trying to, you know, and I've seen you with your
Yeah.
self-help, you know,
Yeah.
do you ever try to say, look, let's try to be funny right now. Let's try to lighten it up. Let's try to do that. Or you're like, this is just the way it always is because we're always talking about this and this is the way it just ends up.
I love that question so much because I have felt throughout the years, right? Because, you know, it's like our podcast was kind of branded as like this comedy self-help infusion or whatever. I I have a hard time forcing a bit. I can't like it. I might think of something like it'd be funny to say this right now, but if the moment isn't right, it's like I'm letting that go because to me, I'm prioritizing the presence of the conversation and that over I'm going to be funny right now and get a laugh. And so anything that may be funny on the podcast has been either it just organically comes up, you know, and it feels like a right moment to say it and I don't have to think about it, or I have kind of betrayed myself a little bit and I've tried to plug or force something in there and it just didn't feel right.
Mhm.
And it's so interesting how different people, especially comedians, can even approach a podcast because we've had a lot of conversations with myself and my former co-host on the show where when I'm on the podcast, I feel like I'm just having a conversation. I'm just me. I don't feel this pressure to be funny. If something funny comes out, fine, but it's not the forefront of my mind. Where one of my co-hosts especially was very open about when she steps into the podcast, you know, she feels this pressure to perform and she wants to put on a good show and she wants it to be funny. And of course, I think that's coming from somebody who's, you know, she's a professional comedian. So I think she has a lot more pressure of like people are looking at her like you got to be funny. And I have left that world. So maybe I don't have that same pressure, but I didn't feel the same kind of like I don't feel so super depleted after podcasting like I just performed. To me, like performing on stage and podcasting, totally different energy, totally different parts of my brain. And my co-host was saying like that there wasn't a whole lot of separation for her. She felt like she was performing and she'd be very depleted at the end of an episode. And I was like, oh, that's so interesting. I'm not approaching it the same way, you know?
Yeah, to me, it's almost like you and I are having a conversation with,
Right.
I don't know how many hundreds of people right now, because, and to me, if I'm not moment to moment trying to find out what I'm staying in the moment of what I'm thinking and feeling and being honest,
Yeah.
then that's fake. And people are
Right.
like, that's not, that was like, that to me, that's nails on a chalkboard. And I guess
Right.
that's why I stick to being serious more, even when I'm talking to comedians. I was always gravitating towards an inquisitive shark of seriousness. And I think you do the same thing from what I saw. And
Oh, yeah.
But you have these like, I watched Lily Thompson. I mean, you know, great comedians. You have these great comedians, you know, on your show. But it seems like you run into the same thing. That's just where you got to be. And serious may it be, even though you have comedians on with you.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. I have never, you know, being around different comedians when you're in that world is like there's some people that don't turn off and it feels like you don't get to know the real them, right? They're always making a bits out of everything. They're never not spinning their wheels about how to make every moment funny. And it's fucking exhausting to be around that. And you also don't feel like it's authentic or sincere. So it's like, you feel like, for me, it's like, I don't know this person. I feel like I know a caricature of them. And so I love being in a green room where comedians are having really deep conversations because they do not bullshit. They get right to it. And then something funny comes out of it without it being forced or pushed. They're not trying bits on you. They're not testing their material. You are just having a really honest conversation with hilarious people. And yeah, that's kind of the energy that I like to bring to the podcast. It's like, this is just a real conversation and some moments are going to be funny. Some are going to be heavy. And that's life, you know?
I think that's a good lesson for somebody that wants to do a podcast. Listen to this conversation. Actually, I think it's interesting. If I do so say, I think I would like to hear what if not before I started podcasting, hear somebody talk about that. What's the long-term plan? What's like 5, 10, 15? You're a self-help person. Do you plan in advance like that, or is it like?
Michael, I wish I knew. I used to be a planner, but my career has taken me so many different weird places that I feel like I can't plan anymore. I'm just along for the ride. But I can tell you this, I really, really miss being in a performance role of some kind. I see myself maybe being able to wanting to like produce, direct, write, and star in my own project. Because right now I'm writing a lot of dialogue for other people, which is still fun because it's like fun to see that come to life, but I kind of miss delivering my own material. I don't want to do it in a stand-up way, but I do think that there could be something where, maybe I'm, creating a short film with a friend or some fun sketches or something. Because I really do miss that. That's like, it's an itch I want to scratch. I just don't know exactly how yet because I'm doing a lot of behind the scenes stuff right now. And I miss that. I miss being, a performer in some way. It's just not the way that the kind of mainstream way, I guess, that people think about in comedy.
There's so many triggers to pull in this day and age compared to like how, when, you probably first started, and definitely before when I first started, there's so many avenues you could take. Now it's just a matter of choosing how you're going to, set that vehicle up, because
right.
You can create, your content and there's so many ways to do it. So it'll be fascinating to see because you're definitely an eclectic person. So I'm sure we'll be seeing something different, and whether
something weird,
it's on a cup or stand up, or you doing something with that cool looking dog behind you, sleeping behind that pillow, and whatever you got planned there. Sounds like you're having a good time. You're just like going along with the flow, and you're like, oh, you're grabbing these things and they're very exciting for you and you're having fun with them. So that sounds like a good time.
Yeah, it has been. And I think, if like the lifestyle of stand-up isn't for you, just the message that like there are other ways to put that skill to use. Like it's not an all or nothing one thing. Like you can find what works for you. It just might take a little while and feel kind of hard and messy, but it is possible. You can infuse that into other things that fit better with the life that you want.
One of probably the only time I've ever heard this is a reversal. We had so many people talk about how they got rid of their corporate job and became a comedian because that was their dream. Well, Delanie Fischer is the opposite. She will teach you how to get out of stand-up if you're stuck doing stand-up, making a decent living, and how you can get out of that and have, create your own dicks on a cup or
yes, exactly. What's your version of that? Exactly.
Yeah, or your own podcast about personal development and how you can, survive being a stand-up comedian. I think that's a wonderful list. You definitely got your own thing going on. Tell everybody how they could find out more about all these things that you do.
Yeah, just go to my website, delaniefischer.com, DELANIEFISCHER.com. That's my home base. So even if things are changing, you'll find the most up-to-date information there.
Delanie Fischer, thank you so much for sharing. Very eclectic, very exciting, very fun. You're having a good time.
Thanks for having me. This was great. I loved it.
Thanks for joining us. Gear up for your next adventure and head over to bolotour.com to check out the amazing Bolo Pack and their other innovative outdoor gear. Catch you next time.